Good morning. Getting back at this Suzuki SX4. This has a J20A. They came with both J20A and J20B engines. I think that's part of the problem why it stopped running right there. Found on road dead. No, I'm just joking. So anyways, when you try to start this thing up, it turns over and over and over and over and over and over and never starts. So my intentions here is to get everything down to timing chain first. I've already preloaded myself here to take the head off, so I've taken the exhaust loose. I've taken the intake off, the power steering pump off. The crankshaft pulley is already off, which it has to come off in order to get to the timing belt anyways. I've got the AC loose. You can't get to the bottom bolt on the water pump bracket without it being out of the way, this hose being out of the way, sorry. So there was barely any charge in this anyways. I went ahead and took the line loose, and I'm going to take it loose right here, down there as well. That gets rid of this whole line. These are both 10 millimeter. The majority of this is 10 millimeter. The valve cover is 10 millimeter. These are all nuts. I've labeled everything in sandwich bags here that way I can keep up with it, because so far I've got about 90 bolts, and I don't want to take the chance of putting one in the wrong place, popping a hole in something or whatever. But we'll go through real quick here all of the things that I've done. I've removed the valve cover, the intake, the exhaust manifold, started removing the water pump, removed the engine mount on the front of the engine, supported with a jack, removed the power steering pump, moved the alternator out of the way a bit, that way I can get the bottom bracket bolt off, which is here. That way the water pump just hangy dangles back there. The bracket mounts to the back of the head and to the block, so it has to come off in order to take the head off anyways. As I said, I'm gearing myself up to take the head off, so I might as well go ahead and take it loose. On the tube here for the water pump, there's two 10 millimeter bolts here and here. In order to get to it, you have to take the cooling neck off. This is not the thermostat housing. The thermostat housing is over there. These are all 10 millimeter. So you got two studs and two bolts. You take those off, make sure to put them in the thermostat housing bag. The intake bolts are 12 millimeter. Be sure to put those in their own bag. The valve cover, let's see, how did I do this? Thermostat and valve cover, since every bolt is different, so you can see the difference in size here. This is an M6, and I'm not sure if this is an M8 or an M7 or standard, or if it's the same and it just looks like it's different. Oh man, that's not good. Catch that before it spills them all out. Anyways, they're different, so you can't mix them up. Even if you did, I think you would be fine, because there's not that much difference in the bolts. You have to take the fuel rail off. Be sure to save the bracket, or not the bracket, but the bushings that are standoffs. They mount in these holes here. And then you just take the injectors out. This had no fuel pressure, which is extremely odd, because most fuel rails keep fuel pressure. Although based off the way this one here looks, it's probably not going to keep much fuel pressure, because it's only an inlet. There is no outlet. So I don't remember where I left off. I had a customer show up, so The injectors have standoffs. There are 12 millimeter bolts that hold it down. The intake has 12 millimeter bolts as well. The bolts for the injectors are easiest to take off with a socket and a ratchet. The ones for the intake, it'd be better using a gear wrench. The power steering bolts, they're a freaking nightmare and a half. You disconnect the line for the power steering pump down here and right here. Both of those bolts are 10 millimeter. That allows the line to move up and down and get out of the way from taking the power steering pump bracket loose, or the power steering pump off the bracket. They are 12 millimeter. I would recommend using a 6-point instead of the 16 points like I have. It makes it a little hard to get it on there and take it loose and keep it straight at the same time. A 6-point will keep you right on. The timing cover are all 10 millimeter. You will have to move the engine up and down in order to get some of them out. I don't like to stay in one place for long, so I move it up, take some out of the top, drop it down, move some out of the bottom. The AC just a few minutes ago scared me to death. It discharged every bit of it while I was away from the vehicle. The exhaust manifold bolts, or nuts rather, it doesn't have but one bolt on it, and it holds this bracket here. And that goes here. Those are 14 millimeter down below and up top here. Underneath where the exhaust ties into the tailpipe, that is also a 14 millimeter. It's spring bolts. So you take those loose, you can move the exhaust up and down however you want. Although you can't take it all the way out without removing the bracket that is on the bottom here of the exhaust. I do believe that bolt is, of course it's going to zoom out on something else here. That bolt is right there. You can get the other one from the underside after you take all this loose, just in case you needed to take it out, but it's not necessary. Whenever you raise the engine back up and you have all these bolts here or nuts loose, the exhaust manifold just drops down and you can take it right out. These are 10 millimeter as well. You want to make sure that you're set on top dead center before taking the camshaft loose. I've actually done this multiple times and not put it on top dead center and not had an issue, but if you want to be safe and rather be safe than sorry, put it at top dead center, take the timing chain loose, and then take the camshafts out. And I intend on doing that myself. So right now I have one more bolt left to take the timing cover off. I've got every single bolt and the one nut loose, or sorry, the 3 nuts loose. The underside of this vehicle, the oil pan connects to the timing cover. That is a 10 millimeter nut, 10 millimeter bolt, 10 millimeter bolt, 10 millimeter nut. The rest of it is 10 millimeter bolts until you get to that one that's inside that hole. It's a 10 millimeter nut. The idler pulley is a 14 millimeter. It goes onto that stud that's right down here. It's very tight. The tensioner goes on the back side here in between the alternator and the power steering pump. It's a 10 millimeter as well. To be able to take it loose, I believe it was a 14. Like to take the belt off, that's a 14. And if your wrench is on the top side of the engine, you're turning clockwise. I mean, even if you're underneath, it turns clockwise, but it's easier to give a specific direction from where you're turning to, because not everybody wants to get underneath to be able to change the belt. The crankshaft pulley was a 19 millimeter. I don't remember where I put it. I think it's in the trunk, actually. If it's not, then it's probably under the vehicle, which I highly doubt. The power steering reservoir just slides right out. It locks down into a bracket here, slides down, locks over top of this piece here. This hose connects to the top of the power steering pump. This one right here connects to the power steering cooler that runs to the front of the engine, and under this core support here, there is multiple wires that have to come off in order to gain access, but there's not anywhere near as much as I've seen on other cars. Don't forget to take your battery cable end off. That's the main thing. Take it off first. That way you don't have to worry about arcing anything. You don't have to worry about a bolt falling down on the starter or the alternator. And be extremely careful with that sensor right there. I didn't take it off to start with, and I should have. And it broke a little pin out of the back of it. They're not very expensive, so I can put another one on it if she intends on keeping this car. But the wiring harness for it is back here. There's that one right there. It's just a little blade or a ball. I think it's a ball. Let me find it real quick. It's in all this junk. Magnet comes in handy too, although it sticks to every single thing that you just decide to take off. Drop it down to the ground, that way it doesn't stick to anything else and I'll lose something. Yeah, I don't know where the pin is. It's okay. Took a few vacuum lines off. The head bolts look like they're 14 as well, you know, like the exhaust and just about everything else on this engine. Once I get to the timing, I'll know exactly what's going to take to get it off. These are like maybe 17s, 17 millimeter. Let me go grab a wrench just to verify. I got an 11/16, so it's like a 17 and a half. So if this goes on with slop, then it's a 17. And it does go on with slop, so it's definitely a 17 millimeter. I have not verified timing marks, although I'm sure they are available online, and I'm sure it's probably generic for most of these. They have timing marks that either face each other or they face a specific mark on the head casting itself. Alright, I'm going to get back to it. I got to get this line off and then get the last bolt out for the water pump bracket and get it out of the way to be able to get the last bolt out down there. I don't know if you can see that through here or not, but no, it turns blurry. There's a bolt down there right behind the water pump pulley. Considering the bolts for the water pump pulley themselves are extremely tight and no room to get in there, it's easier just to take the water pump off than it is to keep fighting with bolts. And also, you don't have to worry about that line getting broken now since you took the two off on the opposing side here. I'll catch another video once I start putting it back together. It may take me a day or so to start back on it, or Monday, since tomorrow we'll be doing a 6-hour drive one direction and a 6-hour drive back.